All right, moving on to the rise of kingdoms. When the Roman Empire collapsed, Western Europe fell into a power struggle between warlords, and the most powerful warlords would become kings. One such warlord was a man by the name of Clovis. Clovis was a ruthless warrior, and he basically conquered the last Roman stronghold in what is now France. He then went on to start uniting all the Frankish tribes under one rule, creating one kingdom, a French kingdom. And when he was baptized a Christian, he forcibly made all his subjects follow Christianity, basically from henceforth making France a Christian nation. One item of note, at Clovis's coronation to become king of France, the room was decorated with yellow lilies, and to this day, the lily has become a symbol of the French people. It's called the fleur de lis, flower of lily, and it was on the French flag for centuries up until the French Revolution. And you might have seen it elsewhere, like on the football helmet of the New Orleans Saints, because New Orleans was once a French city. So basically, the New Orleans Saints are honoring King Clovis and the French people with that symbol on their helmet. 200 years later, King Clovis's great-great-great-great-great-great-grandson was a man by the name of Charles Martel. And Charles Martel will earn the nickname the Hammer.
Stop! Hammer time!
And here's how. Around this time, there was a new religion out of the Middle East called Islam. Muslim armies were driving out of the Middle East into Europe, and they reached as far north as France. The French called them Saracens, and it looked like France would become a Muslim country too, but one man in particular, Charles Martel, stood in the way. Martel raised a French Christian army, and despite impossible odds at the Battle of Tours, he won. I mean, typically, when you have a cavalry army attack an army of foot soldiers, the foot soldiers lose. But Martel pulled it off and drove the Saracens south, and France was destined to remain Christian. And that's how Charles Martel earned the nickname the Hammer. Yet the most famous of French kings, and perhaps the most famous person of all of medieval Europe, was Charles Martel's grandson, Charlemagne. Charlemagne is referred to as the father of Europe. He won over 60 wars, making him undefeated in battle, and most of those wars were against the Saracens invading from the south. Charlemagne's empire stretched from France to Germany to northern Spain to much of Italy, and all the people that Charlemagne defeated, he made them convert to Christianity.
Do you men of the Saxon people now agree that you wish to submit to the mighty Christian king of the Franks for all eternity?
Für alle Zeit.
Basically ensuring that Europe will be a Christian land. And on December 25th, Christmas Day, in the year 800, Pope Leo III crowned Charlemagne the first Holy Roman Emperor, and Emperor of Europe. Charlemagne was intent on becoming literate. He learned to read and write, which was pretty rare among kings back then.
Do you see? There has to be a clear order when writing, clear rules. Everyone has to write the same so everyone can read it.
Reading the old Roman writings, he took Roman ideas that he employed into governing his vast empire. For instance, you know how the Romans divided theirs up into provinces? Well, Charlemagne divided his up into counties. And in charge of each county, he placed a count.
I am the Count. They call me the Count because I love to count things.
A count's job was to govern a county, just like our governor's job is to govern the states, right? A count's job was also to serve as a judge and to enforce the law, be in charge of law enforcement. Because Charlemagne was so intent on literacy, he established schools for children because he wanted the French to be as literate as the English were.
I suddenly remembered my Charlemagne. Let my armies be the rocks and the trees and the birds in the sky.
But Charlemagne's empire would not last. When Charlemagne died in 814, it was divided up among his 4 sons. And also around the same time, Europe was being attacked, not from the south, but this time from the north, from the land of snow and ice, and from a people far more brutal, far more war-thirsty than the Saracens. These new attackers were called Vikings. Now let's look northwest of Britain. In the 5th century, when the Romans were there, they were hiring mercenaries. A mercenary is basically a hired warrior. They were hiring mercenaries from what is now Denmark and what is now Germany. These people from Denmark at the time were called Angles, and these people from northern Germany were called Saxons. And the Romans were hiring these mercenaries, these Angles and the Saxons, in order to fight off the Celts. The Celts are the native British people. And the Romans were able to drive the Celts north into what is now Scotland, west into what is now Ireland, and to the western part of Britain, what is now Wales. But when the Romans retreated, when their empire shrank, and they ultimately withdrew from Britain, these Anglo-Saxon mercenaries went back to their home countries and told them what a prosperous, beautiful land Britain was. And what happened was, when the Romans left, Anglo and Saxon armies invaded Britain and pretty much conquered it. So Britain became a battleground between warring factions. We have the native Celts against the Angles from Denmark, against the Saxons from Germany, and southern Britain was conquered by the Angles and became known as Anglo-land. And that's where we get the word England. But over the centuries, the Angles and Saxon races mesh and blend and become one people known as the Anglo-Saxons, or Saxon for short. The English medieval flag became known as the Royal Arms of England. It is made up of 3 lions. It was first used by the Danes, Danish Vikings. Henry I of England adopted it. He was called the Lion of England, or Henry the Lion. And a lion basically symbolizes justice. So we learned how France became a Christian kingdom, but how did Britain become Christian?